We have more news about iOS 19 getting a visionOS-inspired redesign, including renders that could point towards the UI we can expect, and so let's delve in. So Apple leaker Mark Gurman in a new report had reiterated that iOS 19's design changes are going to be big with a capital B. The design principles we saw with visionOS are going to be adopted by iOS with a focus on greater transparency and new types of windows and buttons. Ooh! And it's not just Gurman claiming this, we have 3 separate sources all corroborating on the idea we could see a visionOS-inspired redesign. Last year, The Verify had first mentioned this, but they claimed it would come to iOS 18, which is wrong of course. But John Prosser then highlighted in a recent video, the camera app in iOS 19 would get a major redesign with more translucent visionOS-esque elements that we could see throughout the OS as well. And now we have Mr. Mark Gurman chiming in, also suggesting the same. Also having said Apple's goal is to make various Apple software platforms more consistent in design. And so these design changes are coming to both iPadOS and macOS. That's good news because it is odd that we got the Big Sur redesign in 2020 for macOS, but those redesigned icons never came to the iPhone or iPads, and so I'm hoping all platforms are based on visionOS and we have the same consistent general look across all devices. The biggest question on my mind though, that no one has answered yet, is are we gonna get circular icons or not? This is one of the elements that sets visionOS apart, and if they want design consistency, they should bring this over to iOS as well. Or maybe here's a crazy idea, Apple, give consumers a choice. Why don't we decide what shape the icons could be? I mean, Apple is slowly letting consumers customize the user interface more and more each year, so it would be nice if you could choose between circular and squircle icons, but I guess if the aim is for design consistency, everyone may be forced to live with circular icons. And actually, we have a render that gives us a possible first look at the redesign, and I like this, guys. It looks great, so I would gladly take some new icons. You know what else I'll take, guys? A sub to the channel, of course. It's free and it'll bring you the latest about Apple right to the subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Saranbyte gang now. But it's not just new icons. I don't want to undermine how radical of a change this could be to iOS. In Gurman's words, Apple plans to update the style of icons, menus, apps, windows, system buttons, and they're going to simplify the way users navigate and control their devices. The changes go well beyond a new design language and aesthetic tweaks, so whilst Gurman is not giving us any specific details as per the norm, this certainly does sound very exciting. Anyway, I know some may argue that we don't need a redesign to iOS, we need less bugs, we need stability. In fact, I have a feeling Apple's giving us this major redesign in the first place to distract us from the fact Apple intelligence features have been delayed, and honestly it's a good distraction because whilst AI features in iOS may eventually get useful, they aren't a must-have right now, whereas design changes to iOS will be something we appreciate every single day. Well, appreciate if executed properly. My only concern are bugs. I really hope it's not too buggy, but if Apple's changing so much with iOS 19, you just know the first few betas are gonna be real rough. Hopefully public builds are stable though, and in my experience, iOS 18 has been mostly good stability-wise, and so I'm hoping iOS 19 can continue being reliable when the final build launches in September. And you know what else is launching in September? The iPhone 17, which of course is going to be running iOS 19 out of the box. So recently got new models from YouTuber iDevice Help showing us a new camera module on the Pro phones, and it's certainly an interesting look. Leakers have been going back and forth on the camera module we could see with iPhone 17 Pro. For those initially unaware, we were expecting a new horizontal layout similar to the Pixel, which would make this iPhone stand out compared to every other iPhone since the 11 Pro, which has had the same stove design layout. However, there is a reason Apple's firmly stuck to this design, and it's not because they're lazy, it's because the lenses are at equal distance from each other, which allows for seamless switching between the lenses, but also the positioning of the camera now helps the iPhone record spatial video, and so moving the lenses could break these key aspects of the camera experience, hence why other leakers then suggested the stove design is going to remain, but Apple instead is going to incorporate a part aluminium, part glass back cover. And that's what we see in these new models too. There's the familiar triple lens layout, but the LiDAR scanner, mic and flash have moved to the right side, and we have this aluminium panel at the top now, and I'm guessing there's going to be a two-tone finish. And yeah, it's kind of similar to the iPhone 5 in this aspect. Now, as much as I do like that Apple's changing things up on the back of the phone, this still feels very bland and reminds me of pocket phones if anything, but I think we have to see the real deal before we can properly judge this. It's not just models we have, by the way, we also have case mockups where we see this design in more realistic renders, and yeah, I need to let this design grow on me because I vividly remember hating the iPhone 11 Pro renders, and then we saw the final product and I went, oh, that's actually not too bad. So the same could happen with iPhone 17. There have been some very nice renders based on these models on Twitter that I do much prefer the look of, so yeah, I know for sure eventually I will like this design. Now some of you might be a little confused I keep saying the iPhone 17 Pro will have a part aluminium part glass design, because you're probably thinking to yourself, wait up, weren't the Pro phones using titanium? Well, apparently Apple's scrapping that and they're switching to aluminium. And you may be thinking why? Well, I think a big reason could be color choices. We all know color choices on the Pro phones are pretty plain compared to the regular phones, and it's partly because the titanium chassis on the Pro phones are very hard to color in bright shades. And so maybe Apple's moving to aluminium just so they can give us fun colors on the Pro phones for once, especially since nowadays functionally phones are not very different. If Apple gives those Pro consumers bright shades of red, green or blue for once, that could get people to upgrade. Now moving to the regular models, the regular 17 is not anything special with it looking near identical to the iPhone 16, but the Air does have a new camera module with a horizontal bar at the top that houses the single lens alongside a mic and flash. And by the way, I think this is the Pixel horizontal camera layout we thought was coming to the Pro phones, but it ended up actually being for the iPhone 17 Air. But surprisingly, it has a horizontal bar just to house one lens on the back of the device. The device will also be slightly smaller than the Pro Max at 6.6 inches, with the thickness of the device including the camera bump being 5.64mm. The 17 Air may also be one of the first iPhones to use a higher density battery. Now it makes sense to use this technology on a device that's naturally going to have space constraints because it will be so thin, and so high density battery allows a lot of energy to be stored within a small physical space. This combined with the fact we should see the very efficient C1 means battery life should still be solid on the Air, which is good to see because that's undoubtedly a concern many would have with such a thin device. And it's not just the Air getting a larger battery, the Pro Max also is getting a battery boost. Leaker Ice Universe mentions the device is going to be even thicker, with it now being 8.25mm in thickness, which is a 0.475 increase over the 16 Pro Max due to a larger battery. Now I do wonder if it's only the Air using the high density battery technology or if the complete range is getting this upgrade. I'm guessing because it's new technology only the Air's getting it for now, but since there's no space constraints as such with the Pro Max, they just pack it to the brim with a humongous regular battery. I'm actually still waiting for a 5000 mAh iPhone because just imagine the battery gains with that kind of device. Anyway, let's quickly get into your comments regarding iOS 19, and we have one from William McBride who says, I feel like if they're going to give us any big changes, they're going to hold off until iOS 20 as that's a more rounded number. I feel like 19 is an awkward figure to do such a big update. And maybe, but I don't think Apple cares that much about the number scheme. iOS 7 was a major redesign and iOS 14 gave us widgets. So yeah, I don't think it's a set pattern Apple follows. They just give us redesigns when they feel like it, and especially right now when they have pressure to give us a redesign because they've disappointed on the Apple Intelligence front, I think it makes sense iOS 19 gets a redesign. Though of course rumors are not set in stone, these are rumors after all, and so there is a possibility this redesign doesn't happen this year and we actually see it with iOS 20 next year. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.